if you're at a place where you're questioning what life is about, what are you meant to do? Why are you here? Why the hell did you come to this planet for? What is the meaning of life? These are all questions that I really struggled with, 10 years ago. I've been talking lately a lot about this spiritual awakening that I've gone through over the last 10 years. And, when that started to happen, when I was starting to kind of wake up, one of the big things for me that came up was this, it was just kind of this feeling, almost this knowing within me that I was here to do something more than what I was doing at the time. That, I had a bigger purpose to serve. But what was confusing is that I didn't know what it was. I had no idea. I just knew that there had to be something more than, where I was at the time 10 years ago. I was just completely miserable, unhappy with where I was in my life. My career wasn't going the way I wanted. I wanted more than what I was doing. I felt kind of trapped. I was struggling with health problems. I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder in 2002. I suffered almost every day from depression. I was overweight, had a lot of struggles with my weight. I mean, it was just, I was $55,000 in debt at one point, and it just kind of felt like, I was just stuck in this rut. And, I didn't know how to get out. And I remember just kind of coming to that realization that like there has to be more to life than this. It just didn't make sense to me. And things just started to kind of come to me where it was almost like flash. I describe them as flashes of insight where I don't know how to describe it other than there's just a knowing, a realization that hits. And I knew like that there was more to life. So, the big thing for me was trying to find what my life purpose was. So I just want to share a little bit about that today. Some of the things that I've done over the years that have helped me out to figure out what my life purpose is. And, in hopes that you can use some or all of these things to help you figure out yours as well if you're struggling. So, that's what happened. And it's kind of funny because, where I was, over the course of my life, it's just kind of really interesting because, way back, in like in the 1990s, early 90s, I started working in a grocery store. And I ended up working like a total of 10 years doing that. But I remember at the time, like I never thought that I would do anything more with my life than that. I was pretty much accepted that was going to be what my life was. And I fast forward to today, it's just completely different. I never would have imagined that I would have left that, walked out on that job in the middle of a shift and started, into a whole new venture in a career in fitness that went for almost 17 years where, I had eventually built up my own business. I ended up speaking for 15 different companies and organizations. I, had a contract with a big name company out in Tracy for a while, who's like a national company. I wrote a couple of books. I had developed some online programs and, was a part of one of the most successful online programs for fitness professionals, and just all this stuff had happened that I never would have imagined, but it all came off of kind of the back end of getting in touch with what my life purpose was. And that's kind of where things really started to change. So, one of the things is that it's like watching for the signs that life gives you. I've said this before that I'm a big believer that life speaks to us. Life is always nudging us in the direction that we're supposed to go. But a lot of times we get stuck in our own agendas. We resist it. We don't listen. We don't pay attention to it. We just, we want to have our own way kind of type thing. And, a lot of times it's just that life has other plans for us, and it's what I've come to know is that it's always for our best benefit, right? That, life is always going to bring you toward where you're supposed to be at that time. And it's always going to be for your benefit, even if you can't see it, as crazy as it sounds. Sometimes it seems like the most horrible things that can happen, like they'd be the worst possible things, but then you look back down the road and it turns out that like they were a blessing in disguise. I've talked about this before. One of it was leaving the grocery, business where, that was my income. That was my job. It was secure. It had good benefits. Then, my boss kind of pulled some bullshit on me about I can't have a goatee at work when I came back from my honeymoon, and tried to make me shave it off. And I had to go, all the coworkers and everything were going to know. They knew what was going on, and I refused to humiliate myself. Plus, he didn't have anything in the handbook that backed up that supposed rule. So I walked out on the job, and it was kind of like, well, now what do I do? And I'm, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. I'm screwed. Should I go back? I need money. How am I going to make a living here? And, it seemed like the one of the worst things at the time. But, had it not been for that, I would have been completely miserable. I was so unhappy in that job, and I probably still would have been doing it. And I really, really would have been a very sad, depressed, and lonely person. And, that's what was the catalyst that pushed me into fitness. And, I had a pretty good career there for a while, which led to other things. So, it's just kind of like watching for those signs, though, because life will always lead you in the direction that you're supposed to go. So the other thing is, the second thing is allowing yourself to feel rather than just think. And what I'm talking about is a lot of times, whether it's a decision that you're having to make, an area in your life that you're struggling, something happens, we tend to have a gut reaction, right? A feeling within us about what we should do or what direction we should go, things like that, right? And a lot of times what happens, and I know I've been guilty of this, I still do it, is where I feel one thing, but then I start thinking and overanalyzing and overthinking and, well, how is that going to happen? And, is that really possible? Oh, no, I can't do that. And, who am I to, and then, I get all the negative language. Who am I to think I could do that? Or, I'm comparing myself to other people. I'm not as good as so-and-so. I used to have, I call it Tony Robbins syndrome. And I'll share this with you. I don't talk about this a lot, but when one of the things I had realized when I started to wake up was that I wanted to speak. I wanted to get out to audiences. I wanted to empower people, inspire them, and share my story, in hopes of helping them achieve their dreams. And I guess I didn't know how I was going to do it. And the one thing, every time I got a little bit excited about doing that, I could start to kind of envision it and picture it. And then the one thought that would always hit me was Tony Robbins. And it was the thought that you're not Tony Robbins. That's what I was telling myself. You're not Tony Robbins. Look at that guy and look at you. Look what he's doing. You can't come close to doing what that guy can do. And that guy's super successful and he's doing this and he does it that way. And you're not as good as him. You can't compare to him. You're not as smart as him. ... And I would just, within minutes, I went from excited to down in the dumps and talk myself right out of it. I'll never be as good as Tony Robbins. Therefore, in my mind, that meant I couldn't go and do any kind of motivational speaking. And it took me a long time to really get that out of my head, that I didn't have to be Tony Robbins to do it. But what I'm talking about is the thinking that went on. Instead of going with my feeling, which what happened was I ended up speaking for 15 companies and organizations, and it was in me. It was a gut feeling I had, I knew I was meant to do this. And, once I stopped kind of the head games and everything, I allowed it and I allowed myself to pursue it and it started to come around. So, that's what I'm talking about with that. A lot of times we just get so trapped in our heads and we overthink things and we just basically mind fuck ourselves to death. So, the interesting thing too, though, is that, we tend to think we have to use our brain all the time. You need to think. And yes, your brain's important, but in reality, the funny thing is that the electromagnetic field of the heart is more powerful than the brain, a lot more powerful. It's almost something 100 times powerful than that of the brain. And what's interesting is that the heart actually receives information from the environment and before the brain does. So our hearts really know what's going on long before the brain does. Then the brain comes in and tries to interpret it and define what it means and label it and judge it. And then that's when we get into all the head games, right? So it's really just learning to listen to your heart, follow your heart, kind of go with that inner feeling, that gut feeling that you have, and trust that there's a part of yourself that knows exactly, what to do. And it's just trusting that part of yourself. All right. And then the third thing is detaching from the outcome. And this is so tough for a lot of people. This is still tough for me. I struggle with it a lot because, I tend to want to control everything, even all the shit that I can't control, but that's the thing. It's that we cannot control the outcomes. No matter what our hopes and dreams and goals and aspirations are, we don't control the actual outcome. We can engage in the process and do all we can. We can control what we do, the actions we take, how we behave, our thoughts, all of that stuff, but we can't control the actual outcome. It's not up to us. So it's like being able to detach from that, because a lot of times it's easy to get fixed to the idea that we have to have something this way. It has to happen at this time. It has to, be only this, right? It's like this one-dimensional thinking. And the problem is that if it doesn't happen the way we think it's supposed to, when it's supposed to, how it's supposed to, then we kind of become victims. We lose flexibility. We get so attached to this whole idea of having to have this one thing. And when it doesn't happen, it's like, we just fall apart. Like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? Oh, now I'm screwed, right? And it just creates a lot of suffering for us because, we then have trouble accepting what is. And when we can't accept things, it's usually because we're trying to resist it from happening. We're trying to, no, I want my way. I'm going to bend this world to my will. And it really creates a lot of stress and struggle and suffering for us. So really, it's being flexible enough and almost having just an open enough mindset to saying, okay, I'm going to do whatever I can in my power to make this happen. But if it doesn't come, then, maybe it's one of those things where life is trying to show me where I'm supposed to go. Maybe it's nothing like this. Maybe it's a different direction, but maybe it's something better, right? Maybe this isn't, where I'm supposed to go right now. I'm supposed to be in this other direction, and life will show me that. And it's just being open and flexible enough to that. Or sometimes it could be like that maybe this is meant for you, but it's just the way that you're approaching it, the strategies you're using and how you're going about it need a little bit of fine tuning. Maybe it's just trying to change up the strategy a little bit, try something different, a different way to go about achieving the same thing, right? So, really being able to detach from the outcome. And then finally, the last one, the fifth one is really just, it's kind of piggybacking off that, but being open to possibilities. There's so many possibilities. And a lot of times we can't see them all because we're limited by this brain. This brain of ours it's a human brain. And it's got a lot of capacity, but it's very limited in the capacity that it has. Our brain is, it's not able to see everything that our, how do you want to say it? Higher consciousness, our higher self, your connection to God, source, spirit, whatever you want to call it, higher power. But that part of ourselves that I was talking about before, that's the part that can see. It's that connection we have to our to higher consciousness. That's what basically can see all the possibilities that are out there. We can't, there's no way we could see it all. Our eyes are limited with what we can see in terms of colors and vision and everything. We only see just a fraction of what's in the entire spectrum of this whole universe. And it's amazing. So, being open to possibilities, even if you don't really see what they are, just being open to them and not having a closed mind about it, because sometimes I'm telling you, man, the opportunities will come, but if we're not open to the possibilities, we'll miss them. They can be literally right in front of you, and you'll never see it because you're so focused on something else. You're focused on, right, the outcome you want or the way you want it, or it has to be this way, right? Back to that last one I was talking about. So it's really just, being open to all those possibilities, and Yeah, I know for me that was one of the big things that, I look at now, having such a fixed mindset all those years ago, thinking like, okay, that my life was just going to be spent, working in a grocery store, and I wasn't going to do much else, into, how it evolved, through this whole kind of fitness career I had, and then ultimately leaving that. And, like I was talking about before, the speaking engagements that happened, and writing the books, and developing some of the programs, and, for a while having my own online radio show, and just kind of things, I never would have like guessed I was going to really do that stuff, back then. And it's just kind of cool because I stayed open enough to the possibilities, knowing that, I had this purpose, but there wasn't only one way to fulfill it, right? I didn't have to just be a speaker. I didn't have to just be an author, right? Where I only write books, as long as whatever your purpose is, there's many different ways you can fulfill it, doing videos like this, and posting them. Just, these are all just ways that I use to fulfill my overall purpose. So, that's kind of it. And, so hopefully, that kind of helps to get you kind of, steer you in the right direction a little bit, give you a few kind of tools that you can use. If you're questioning what your purpose is, you're really not sure, but you just have this feeling in you that you're meant for something more, and you may not know what it is. So, these really help me out. And, so I'd, strongly suggest just give them a try and see how they work for you. So hopefully this helps you out. If you have any questions, comments, feedback, go ahead and leave me a comment below. And that's it for me today. So until next time, have faith, follow your heart, trust yourself, take care of yourself, and I'll talk to you soon.